mixing this with a trace of yellow ochre. Right, the yellow ochre will give a creamy quality. This will be a weak sunlight filtering through a cloud layer. So there's no direct sunlight, but it's filtered light coming through from the west. So it's the right way round now. Princess Street goes that way towards the west. So the sunset's over there. You can see I can rub and scrub over the now fixed image, and it will withstand quite vigorous abuse. See that? Without, if you're working in charcoal, then you need to fix it. But that's already fixed. You can see the lion motif at the top, the gargoyle up there. I brushed the sky over that, and there's no issues whatsoever with it holding up to the action of the brush. If you've never visited the National Gallery of Scotland, it has some of the world's great treasures in there. I'm going to use black. Oh dear. This is lamp black. Some of the severity of the black is tempered by the creamy colour. And I might add a few nuances of other colours as well. But this is just to give some tonality in the sky. It's not so much cloud as light passing through a filtered, layered, cloudy sky. But there's translucence there as well. I'm trying to achieve. These are just irregular patches. I hope you can see from the shine of the painting, sometimes it's an issue. So you rely on the screen really to see what's going on. The rest of it is quite, I want to keep a good deal of luminosity in there. I'm going to put some mist through the city as well, low-lying atmospheric light in here. One technique that I use a lot is to apply the colours with workhorse brushes and bristles, and then once it's on the canvas, manipulate it with clean, dry brushes. So we can start to feather some of these tones, pulses of light, just to naturalise them. Very soft edges here and there, other areas relatively in focus. Anytime I want to relocate that drawing, if it disappears, I just need to wipe through the layer and it will spring back. This is a little bit of ultramarine going into the grey. There's never much paint on the brush for this, there's already plenty on the canvas. This is like a plume of mist that's hanging over the park. It's transparent, we'll see things in there. I've just drawn it out on a piece of watercolour paper. I've got some blue and some raw umber. It's slightly darker than the sky. There's a bit of ochre in there as well. It's quite dramatic, Edinburgh Castle. You see it from all parts of the city. Making sure I've got it the right way around. I think that's what I should do is go a bit to the right. Now, you think, right, how can I do this on wet painting? Remember, I brushed that out. It's oily and it's brushed out very thin, so it's not going to bother it too much. Now, normally I would do this on the flat, but I could just reach the paint, so. I want it to, you see those lovely milky days of misty light when all the shapes flatten out. They seem to dissolve in the light. But you get lovely simple profiles of buildings and trees and mountains. If I wasn't using this stenciling technique, it'd be just a case of painting it carefully. One thing if you like what you see here, is to avoid producing a line, an outline. You want it to be treated as a mass shape. By that I mean the line isn't there, it's just a shape against the backdrop. Glad you like that, rather fun to do. So what we do now is we use these soft brushes I'd like just the castle to dissolve back into the mist, and it can just sweep behind the National Gallery. The thing about this is, if I can get everything done, there's a screen of trees from the park through which the castle is seen. So there'll be trees coming up. There might be just pulses of grey, the curtain walls just glimmering through a little bit. I'm using a flat brush for this to create some angular shapes. We'll put some burnt sienna in here. Ochre, burnt sienna and blue, variations of those colours. Here and there black with some of the creamy white. Liquid as well, 50-50% mix. So where I've skimmed over this column here, that will come back. It's a useful place to start. First intention is to pick out a lovely profile against the sky. It's that lovely Portland stone, but it's very weathered. There's lots of algae giving it colour. Casting around among the colours, looking for variations of hue. Not bad for a Friday. That's a bit shaky on it. Maul stick just gives me an anchor to control the shape. Those columns are really tough to do. They actually have a flared shape. So that's very thin fluid colour at this stage. Helps me to see the drawing, and it gives a washy kind of look to it. Now the theme of the painting in terms of its design is this portico running round the gallery. I'm making a sort of feature of this, and if you've studied composition and things, you'll see that the general composition is on an L shape. It's just that's what attracted me about this corner. I thought, oh, it's a great composition there. And I was rather taken by having that little pulse of light through the columns there. The honey-coloured stone glowing out against the park. And as it goes up to the sky, that becomes like a dark. So it will be light, against the ground level it will appear as a light shape, and further up it will appear as a dark shape. I'm just taking my time with that column because I'm trying to get that bulging quality. It's not just a straight line. This will be the anchor point. The wet streak will be reflecting that arrangement. I'm hoping to make use of the tram lines here as well. They produce a really pleasant linearity on the street level. But this is the initial attempt to build up the reflective street. There's a hint of viridian crept in there, very well observed. Often I'll use acrylic for underpainting, but I like to use it in itself.
You could use that brush in the same way that you just used.
I could, yeah. Yes. The issue with acrylic sometimes is the speed of drying, but if I want to do this particular approach, I would add some slow drying medium, plenty of liquid, and give it time to be able to do the transitional blending. Now here we have a black cab which will throw a very useful dark in the optimum spot. And the rest of it will be like the edge of the park with a wall. So this is the general tonality of the trees in the park against the building. So I'm trying to work around the column here to get dark background against the light of the column. If you're fairly new to painting and the jargon sort of is foxing you a bit, the counter change is when you play off the tones one against the other. So here we have a stark silhouette of dark against light. But what's often neglected in sort of less experienced painters is to use the other possibility is the light against dark. The light against dark really produces a three-dimensional quality. So there's the light on the column seen against the comparative darks of the park. This paint now is setting a little bit by the use of the liquid, so I can add the final tones of the dark accents amongst the stonework. We have things like steps up to the portico here. Now I'm putting these in and making sure that I include them in the composition because of the perspective. There's a strong vertical accent in the buildings, and there's a dynamic perspective in this direction. The remaining areas, there's a wet pavement, which I need to get some more of that sky reflecting in. This colour here is going to reflect in these areas. I need to get some cool colour in, street level. I'm still using the square brush. I need to surround that black cab. This is the outer rim of the park. It's just billboards and pavements and railings with the trees nestling above. Right, I'm going to work around the black cab with the tone. I want to get a glint of light on the roof. So I'm using my drawing now to cut the shape. You'll see a little spot of colour there. I'm going to surround that with black. It'll be the traffic signal. Put it in so I know where it's going. Those trees will reflect in the road. For the trees themselves, that's the one. I would rather be using, instead of the hard-edged rectangular brush, which is ideal for picking out the profiles of architecture, this synthetic brush here. Buildings for that one, and then foliage and rough edges and clouds for the others. The brush will imprint its mark in the essence of the subject that you're trying to pick out. So this is lovely because it's going into that leathery, partially dry oil. Still very, very fluid, but it's starting to set a little bit. But I can use the wet in wet technique to just create atmosphere within these textures. They did a feature in the local press a few years ago. It was my list of 20 things, like what film have you just been to see, what books are you reading? And then one of the questions was, if your house was on fire and your family was safe, what would you run back in for? And I said, my scrubby old moth-eaten tree painting brush. That you'd throw away at most of you. It's just all the old beat up brushes I've worn into shape. This is almost black. There's a little bit of colour in there as well. What I'm searching for throughout this is just to gradually take out the white. You may have heard the term lost and found. I've tried to make that cab come into focus as it turns around the railings. But you'll see the reverse end. I'm quite happy to smudge that away and not to actually describe it thoroughly. And the painting usually is all the better for it. In painting figures, I could never understand the advice in books about don't give them feet and what have you. Oh, I don't see it like that. But the ring of truth is that I used to paint them incredibly intensely detailed so you could count the shoelaces. The remarkable consequence of which my figures all look like this. As soon as I learned about sort of giving it the Degas treatment, they started to amble through the composition. So it's tight precision around the head where the light strikes, and then blurry suggestion. It takes a good deal of time, I find, to train yourself up to disregard things that you can see and only pick out the bits that really are significant. In fact, colour is fascinating. One thing I would say, if you're fairly new to painting, a really excellent thing to do is to do one or a series of paintings in monochrome, just in raw umber with white or black with white. Do the whole painting in monochrome, but the tone is what makes a subject look real. If you're interested in paintings that look real and have a naturalistic quality, all of that is contained in the tone. The colour doesn't really, it's very important. This is just a suggestion of railings. Counter change. The same again. Black cab, skylight on the wet railings. The railings counter changing against the dark. Light is phenomenal at coming forward and creating three-dimensional effects. That technique I was talking about as well of creating fine lines. People often say to me, I love oil painting, but I can't get the detail. I can't make the lines thin. I can't do rigging on sailing boats. See this line on the rail there? It's rather heavy. I can cut it back with the dark. I'm hoping this will contribute well to the painting. The traffic signals, they give an accent of dark which echoes in the figures and the black cab.
Does that mean he's gone through on red then?
He's sitting there waiting to go. He's waiting for that stupid artist to get out of the way before he makes a right turn. And the one thing I'd like to do, we're almost there, 3 o'clock finish. Right, if I've got time, I would like you to bear with me. I would just put in which it's lost in the paint. Let's see if I can find it. The lamp standard. In here. It's there somewhere. See, the lamp standard, it's integral to the success of the painting, really. Comes a point where you just need a fine brush and some careful, dexterous handling of paint. These paintings are developed with some speed and vigour and building atmosphere. Then some contemplative, descriptive painting as well. The technique I use is long-standing. It's just with a maul stick and fluid paint. Pick out some well-observed little shapes. We'll have the lights on. It's even better. It's all right, they can go off again. Couple of minutes, something there. I can well standing in this thing. I just wanted to finish with a couple of things. I meant to put some lovely dark descriptive painting into there, but I'd rather focus on this. I've got a fluid paint. On a figure, I use a lot of rim lighting. You see those little punchy lights catching on head and shoulder, glinting off the edge of a brolly. Just little accents that pull out shape. Great trick in painting water or any wet surface. The wet street will be painted pretty much like a lake, but the illusion is enhanced by interrupting the vertical blending with ripples, or in this case a suggestion of the tram system. I'm just getting warmed up now, I have to break off. That's it. A quick trip along Prince's Street.